Diary, hello. It is the end of March 2025. This is a short but hopefully significant documentation of the changed Smarthome implementation in our apartment. So I'm going to start off with what we used to have. I'm going to move to what we do have now. And the change between the installation that we were planning on and what we finally ended up with. So you're probably all familiar with something like this, which is the Danfoss, in this case, Danfoss programmer, whereby we have, from the control panel, we've got a set of buttons for the radiators and a set of buttons for the hot water. And there's a programmer, a timed programmer here, which in our case, we have electric radiators and an electric water heater. So for the radiators, we have a bedroom and a lounge, two separate sets of radiators, and we can switch those on all the time or off completely or automatic, which means to say behind this panel there's a schedule that you can set, say for example coming on at 7 in the morning, switching off at 9 in the morning and then coming on at once in the evening, for example, or you can have it on continuously. So that's the case for the radiators and the hot water. And what we wanted to do was completely replace the system with a smart home system. And then I was thinking about this for quite some time, and I don't know if this has been done elsewhere, but I'm sure it has. I was thinking, why do I need this programmer at all? Because if I had a Wi-Fi controlled switch, which has its own app, and that app has the capability to switch on and off at predetermined periods, why would I need this programmer at all? And that's where the genius of this idea came into play. So what was the plan that we made and how did it actually come into force? So this is the proposed plan. So that was the old programmer that we were looking at. And what actually happens is that programmer doesn't switch the electrical items directly. It goes through into the consumer unit, and there's something called a contactor. So effectively it's a relay. So it's switching a small current and it goes into the consumer unit, and there's a contact, what the electrician calls a contactor, and that contactor then switches the actual big load. Okay, so the idea was to completely remove this programmer. So if you imagine you've got the mains coming into this programmer, and you've got the water side and you've got the central heating side. The water side, what happens in the old setup is that when this programmer wants to switch on, for example, the 3 kilowatt water boiler, it says I want to switch it on. It sends a message to the contactor, and then the contactor switches on the 3 kilowatt supply. And we've got a fancy water boiler which has got two 3 kilowatt elements. It's got one in the middle. The second one is in the middle, so you can provide a boost to the heating, and you can heat the water tank at 6 kilowatts instead of 3. So the idea was to completely remove this programmer and just have a unit which we initially thought was going to be a Meros 715 switch and a separate isolator switch here. So we were going to have a light isolator switch, so those big switches with a circular switch isolator, so for safety's sake, and all of that would attach to the consumer unit. So you've got the consumer unit, not shown in this diagram here at the top, feeding a big isolator switch, and that isolator switch goes to an inline Wi-Fi switch, and through an app on my phone initially I would control that Wi-Fi switch, saying switch on, switch off. So switch on at 7 in the morning and switch off at 9:30 in the morning, as in the previous example. But instead of it being via this programmer, I do it on my smartphone app. The smartphone app would go via the internet, talk to this Wi-Fi connected switch and switch on the load. So that was the original plan for the water. And for the central heating, the old system had a thermostat in the lounge and a thermostat in the bedroom, and the idea take that thermostat and throw it away. And I checked, in that thermostat we had live, neutral and switch live, which is very lucky because I'd replaced that with another Wi-Fi switch. So this Wi-Fi switch is switching load again. This is switching up to 3 amp load. In fact, the radiators, electrical radiators are less than 2 kilowatts actually, but it can switch over 3 kilowatts. So there's remove this thermostat from the wall, replace it with this unit, which is a Meros MTS 300 unit, and that's for underfloor heating, which we are not using underfloor heating, but that has its own thermostat and a second thermostat that you can put down into the underfloor, which we wouldn't need. It's got a thermostat in the unit itself, and it can measure the room temperature. So if you say, I want to set the room temperature to 24 degrees centigrade, and it measures the room temperature at 20, it can say, I want to switch on. So in the automatic mode, you can say, switch on between, so again, 7 in the morning and 9:30 in the morning. And so it would trigger the on switch, but then the thermostat would say, well, you set the thermostat to 24 degrees, but it's actually 26 degrees. So I've got nothing to do. Or if it was 21 degrees in my example, it would say, okay, I need to bring up the temperature by 3 degrees. So that was the plan. Let me show you some of the devices that we bought. So we ended up not using this device. So this device was going to be the Meros device, the MSS 715, and this was going to, for example, switch on the water boiler or the radiators in the house. We decided not to use that. Why is that? Because we found this genius device. We found this device called a, oh, well, we know, what's it called? It's called a Time Guard FST Wi-Fi TU. There's two different versions of the switch, and it's a Time Guard switch. So it's a time, I don't know why that's not typing. Time Guard Wi-Fi switch. So there already was separately a set of isolator switches in various places. So all we needed to do is to actually take out the simple isolator switch and install this device. It was absolutely wonderful. So again, this is the Time Guard Wi-Fi switch. So that ended up being used in 3 places. Firstly, for the radiator in the bathroom, and secondly, twice for the water boiler. And the other switch, the Meros Smart Thermostat underfloor heating control, which looks just like this, that sits on the wall, and that needs live, neutral and switch live. That sits on the wall, has its own thermostat, temperature thermostat inside the device, so it knows that the room temperature. It has an additional wire which could be connected for the underfloor heating, but we don't have underfloor heating, so we don't need it. And that's the device that is connected in the diagram here. So that's here. So just let's show you that in more detail. Again, you've got the consumer unit with live, neutral and earth, just showing one wire there, but it's multiple, as you know, a hardcore wire going into behind the walls, coming out at the place which was the thermostat. That's been thrown away. We put this device here instead. That's got live, neutral, switched live, and it's got a Wi-Fi connection. Okay, so via an app on my smartphone, I can say to this device in the lounge, okay, I want you to switch on at 7 in the morning, and I want to switch off at 9:30 in the morning, and I want the temperature to be 24 degrees. So with the Meros underfloor heating, you set the temperature, you set a time switch on and off, and we still have an isolator switch next to the heating, which is in the wall, at the base of the wall. So that switch is still kept. The only thing we did is we took off the old-fashioned mechanical thermostat and replaced it with this new Wi-Fi connected switch. So the situation is we no longer have a consumer. We do have a consumer. We no longer have a programmer. And how does it work in practice? Well, so in the bottom left-hand corner of this diagram, we've got an Amazon Show device. And that's an Amazon device with the ALX ELA smart assistant on it, and she's got a connection to the internet, and we've defined the TimeGuard switch and the Meros switches to Amazon. We've added them into the Amazon ecosystem. Obviously, that we checked beforehand that both the Meros and the TimeGuard can do this. So they can talk via the internet through to the Amazon show. We use a voice command to switch on all aspects of the system. So we don't use it to set the schedule, but in order to switch it on or off or auto, we can issue a voice command from the Amazon device, and that will switch on the TimeGuard or switch off the TimeGuard. So I could, for example, say switch on the hot water or switch on the hot water boost. I've got two different names, and it would switch on those two circuits. And the same is true for the lounge heating and the bedroom heating. And that is it. So we no longer have a programmer. We of course have a consumer unit, but the wires that come out of the consumer unit feed the circuits directly, and we've just simplified everything. So that's all I have to say. That's how the system works. You need a smartphone to do the configuration. There's two different apps because those different smart switches use two different apps, sadly. But the common link is Amazon and the ALX ELA Smart Assistant, because that can control everything using your voice. Thank you for watching.